So I've grown a bit bored of my project, so I'm going to be showing you guys how to do some of these in my current Wardens of Mankind style. And by that, I of course mean completely wrong. Because I'm not sure if you guys have realized it, but the Wardens of Mankind aren't exactly, well, fully Dark Angels looking. If you look at his right shoulder, you'll see that that's an upgrade sprue shoulder. But if you look at the other shoulder, it's another upgrade sprue shoulder. And then he also has all this red when it's mostly supposed to be green, and his mask looks like that. And he also has blue eyes instead of red. He's just completely all on his own. And that makes him a Warden of Mankind. But there is a method to my madness. You'll see that he has the red here on his little shield thing, on his elbows, on his jetpack, and on both his knees. That's a sign that he's a sergeant. You can see it from the front, you can see it from the back. It identifies him. Plus he has that little sword right there too, or combat knife. His second in command is this guy right here. He has the same red faceplate as the sergeant, but he also has the one red knee instead of the both red knees. And he doesn't have red on his thrusters, so that means he's not a sergeant. He also has the number 2 on his back, but that's not as important. Then we have number 3, and he's your standard Marine. He doesn't have too much red on him, but he still has it on the elbow, on his gun, and on his backpack. And then to further the same theme, number 4, backpack, elbow, gun. Done. And then number 5, backpack, elbow, gun, done. Now you'll see they're all red. I'll show you why in a second. The reason they're red is because these guys are white. The red, they were the regular bolters. The white, these guys are the heavy bolters. And you'll see he still has the things that makes him a sergeant. He has that little shield on the front. He has the red thrusters. He also has that combat knife. And beyond that, he's got a white backpack, white elbow pad, and white gun. We continue a bit further. We go to his second. White backpack, white elbow, white gun. But he also still has the red knee pad, just like the other red guy's second in command. Got his third. Move him back. Fourth. Move him back. And we got his fifth. Move him back. The color scheme is a way to differentiate rank from one another. Beyond that, you'll see that both Mark V's, they both have the purity seal on their right shoulder. That's another way to kind of distinguish the two. And that's what I'm going to be doing with this box right here. Before we get started on these guys, I would like to establish a couple things. Like on my other builds so far, these guys are going to have winter bases. That means snow, that means ice, and that means nice looking rocks. And it's a little bit of grass. I might be adding a shrubbery or two, but that's to be seen. Another thing, I'm going to have to be splitting these guys into heavy and regular bolters yet again, because I want 2 full squads. And that means 10 Marines. And so I'm going to have to paint 5 red and 5 white. Other than that, let's get to it. How we're going to start is by first making each character, assigning them either a regular bolter or a heavy bolter, and then posing them as well. Beyond that, we're also deciding who's going to be a sergeant and who's not going to be a sergeant. Something else to consider while making and posing them is the height. You usually want the lead character to be taller than his subordinates. Now it's just time to open the darn box already and get to it. Okay, so now that everything is clipped out, I'm now going to start assembling stuff in no necessary order and try and figure out what character looks like what and what character doesn't look like what. And to start with, I'm going to go with the heavy bolter guys. Also, since I'm now making the heavy bolters, I also want to make sure that I don't repeat any of the same poses that I did last time. So, Here they are so that I don't repeat them. So at the end of that last time lapse, you may have seen that I was kind of repeating steps, kind of refitting, trying to see how stuff looked. And then the thought occurred to me. I have bits I can use. I can just kit bash this stuff a little bit. And so that's what I did. So you'll see that during the time lapse, I've been putting stuff into each base plate. That's how I personally organize stuff. Like this guy, he's going to have those parts. This guy's going to have those parts, and so on and so forth. Another thing they may have seen during that time lapse is I took these old blue pieces and I just either added them in straight up, or in the case of this guy right here, I cut off the hand of the blue piece and then replaced it with this gray hand piece. And that's the greatest thing about Primaris Marines in general, is that you can just mash anything you want together. Like, I could have probably used some of these, these connecting hand bits, and all I need to do is shave down the nub of the hand, and then I could just put, like, the knife on it or something. It's just something to think about, because you're not going to use all these bits, because, look, you're always going to end up with extra stuff. So why not use it? The next step, however, is me addressing some shoulder plates to certain people. Now, this shoulder process is pretty simple because I already have a tried and true method. Everyone's left shoulder is the standard new Primaris Dark Angels piece, and then the ranks are established by who gets the old Dark Angels upgrade sprue piece, and like which one has the skull, which one doesn't. So the sergeant gets the little one with the skull. You can't see it because everything's blurry. The second guy, he gets the one with the little nub at the top. Third one, swords. Fourth one, normal looking. And then the fifth and final one, he gets the little tassel boys. Or actually, these two might be switched. Regardless, figuring it out. Now I just need to glue all of them together, and then we can get to basing.
A few minutes later.
So, they're all glued together now, and I like to go over some small additions that I've made in the gluing stage. And it's mostly this green stuff that I've done onto this sergeant, which mostly comes down to I gave him a grenade launcher, and I added a pouch for his combat knife to sit alongside, along with a small strap, belt, whatever, on his shin. And then a little, if it'll focus, talisman in his hand that's now holding a knife backwards. And something else that I did is I cut the back of this guy's knee off, if it'll focus, and put some green stuff there. And it's because I want him to look like he's rushing forward, really leaning into it, like he's avoiding gunfire and such like that. But beyond that, everything else is relatively the same. But something that I would actually like to get into real quick is cohesion. So what exactly am I talking about when I talk about cohesion? I mean the fact that stuff has to make sense with your models, or at least it should. Like, I put this sheath on his leg because he's holding a knife in his hand. Therefore, this man who is holding a pistol should probably have a holster somewhere on him, and such like that. And this guy, since he doesn't have that much but still has a pistol, he'll probably have a holster still, but also probably a little booty thing of pouches and such. And the same goes for the rest of them. If there's a spot that looks like it could use some extra detail, just add it. There's no reason to not to add it. And another thing, I'll probably be adding a pistol to this guy as well, because if we look at the last sergeant, he had a pistol. And it's adding that extra sense of cohesion that makes these two look like they're part of something. And it just all makes sense. That's the best way to put it. It just has to make sense. So I'll show you me doing that, or at least show you the results, and then we'll finally get on to the basing stage. Okay, heavy bolts and marines are done and they are equipped with their pouches and such. But I think it's about time we start on those regular marines. Let's get to it. What? Who? When? What
in the goddamn?
Well, now that all the guys are created, you'd think it'd be time to start basing, but no. I gotta drill all these barrels out. But I will not subject you into that. Straight to the basing. Now, what will we be using? Skulls, corkboard, rocks, smaller rocks, snow, grass, Gorilla Glue, Mod Pouch, more Gorilla Glue, a single wire, green stuff, and petroleum jelly. The petroleum jelly is for the green stuff. Totally not for other things. Okay, I'm seriously going to start now. I'm going to be starting off with a regular bolter sergeant. And like any good project, it begins with just trying to get your idea out there. And so I usually start with the corkboard, get my green stuff out as well. Start mixing up that green stuff and then putting it onto the base. Because then that makes it easier for when I put my corkboard in late. It's at this point, now that I have the general base, that I'm going to start adding some landscaping rocks, kind of building it up so he has that extra height. I'll be adding a skull to make him look a little bit more unique from his fellow soldiers. And yeah, there it is. After that, I'll be taking that wire that I told you guys about in the beginning and starting to make a little shrub. And you'll see it right there. And it's a matter of getting him off the base for a second just to mush it down into the green stuff. But other than that, comes out looking just fine, looking like a dead shrub in a winter wonderland, which is my intent, that is. Now that the sergeant is made, we're going to move on to his second in command. And this process is going to go more or less the same, where you just got to start with trying to figure out how you want to position him. I'm going to be taking some cork boards. I have him leaning up a embankment slope, whatever you want to call it. And you can see right here that I'm just kind of giving him that right angle, positioning him and all that. Then I'm using the green stuff to more or less gradually work up that slope. Now that we have his general pose down, I'm going to be adding a grass tuft just to excite the basing just a little bit. Using a dead one because this is a winter wonderland, but still, it's a little piece of grass nonetheless. Next, we have the third guy in the squad, Dooley Boy. And Dooley Boy, well, he's not the sergeant, and he's not the sergeant's second, so he's just getting a fair treatment, having some green stuff pushed into his base, and then some of that corkboard that looks a bit like rocks pushed into the green stuff to give still that effect of it's a rocky snow area. Other than that, though, he got the pretty bog standard thing to begin with, but later I added a little extra something. Speaking of adding something a little special to his base, I decided to give him a dead bush like I gave the sergeant, which is just some wire that's kind of twisted into a natural-ish kind of shape and then pushed into the base. I think it looks rather well, and he pulls it off. Alright, the fourth guy here is getting a little bit complicated because now I'm going to start adding some ice. And to start off with, I have to paint the ground floor texture, what's below the ice, and then I need to add this little embankment, which I'm going to use these kind of pebbles for, because it makes it all, you know, contrast when I start adding the actual ice. Alright, here's a complicated bit where we make some ice. First, squirt Gorilla Glue, a lot of it, onto a smooth surface that you can kind of scoop off of later. Then you start adding color to it to get it the color of, well, the ice you want it to be the color of. Not much to it. Then you take stick and you just kind of smear it all over the place where you want the ice to be. It's not that hard in concept, but it does take a little bit of practice. And you'll see that adding a little bit of swirly colors will help as well. And then sanding it actually gets it some of that white that's needed to make it more look like kind of cracked ice. Speaking of that cracked ice, I use this knife here to cut some grooves in to really give it that, oh, this ice has been here a while and someone's been stepping on it. Now it's just a matter of gluing my little plastic boy here onto the base. And something to keep in mind here, you want to use just your regular super glue, not your plastic glue on accident, because plastic glue won't work here. And now we're on to the very last boy of the group. The very last boy of the group gets a very, very simplistic base. Takes on that cork board, and you more or less just glue it on. And that's about it, really. It's not a lot to it. It's just gluing on there, making sure it's not in the way of his pose, and that's all you really have to worry about. So as you all just saw, we got done with these guys right here. Got our sergeant right there. He's got a little bush, got a skull or two. And then over here, got a second in command. He's got some rocks, a bush, and another skull, but the skull's facing towards me, so you can't see him, but you probably saw him in the thing, the hookie. This guy's got a bush. This guy's got ice. This guy's got rocks. And now it's time to work on the other guys. Or at least that's what I'd say, if they weren't already done. Like, I have no clue who made these. Alright, but either way, now we have to go on to doing a little bit of base painting. And then we're going to add the snow effects. The fun part.
Oh my god, you're so cute and funny.
Thanks.
Can I crush your balls?
Okay, now that the base painting is done, it's time to add our snow. And for that, we're going to need our snow, some Mod Podge, and a paintbrush we don't like. This step is rather simple. You just need to wet your brush a little bit. Then you take some Mod Podge, straight from the tub actually, and then you just paint over where all your white spaces are. And so I'm going to do that real quick because it takes really no time at all to get this glue on top of it. And then once you're done with that, you set the paintbrush off to the side. You take a pinch of the snow, and then you just drizzle it on top of where you just put all that glue. And well, you get a couple more pinches too to make sure you get the whole surface covered. And yes, this is messy, but other than that, you're basically just done. Now you can add more Mod Podge to places you want a little bit more elevation in your snow, but it's not all that necessary. And I'm probably just going to leave that guy at that. I'm going to do the rest off camera, show you guys the completed result. Then I'm going to move on to painting the rocks. And here they are, all snowed up. Again, just go around the rocks, stick to on top of your glue, and everything should be just fine. Now to the rocks. For this rock painting demonstration, we're going to be going with the Heavy Weapon Sergeant, just because he has that very prominent boulder up front, and that'll be very easy to show you how to paint. And speaking of paint, we're going to need a navy, a gray, and of course, the black and white. And other than that, it's just a matter of mixing the four and trying to get a good kind of gradient. Because as you can see with this guy right here, he's got that little bit of blue in the recesses of his rocks. But then further forward, you get the gray, and then you get the white touch-ups at the tips. And that's what we're going for. Let's do it. So, as you just saw in that time lapse, what I did is I started with the navy, and then I went up to the gray. Then after the gray, I mixed the gray with a little bit of white, and then I put that lightish gray on top of the rock. And then I finally highlighted with some white. Then as for the black, I used a lot of water, and I just kind of tucked it into that one little recess right there, so we can get that nice gradient going. And now it's time to do the rest of them.
What? When? How? What is this off-screen mining?
So, all the bases are completed. Let's get on to painting the armor, I guess. So, for this armor painting portion, we're going to start with the sergeant. And we're going to be painting him like we painted the other heavy sergeant. Wait a minute. These were red before. The thrusters, the shield plate, the knees, they were red before. I guess they're white now? Whatever. Painting this guy like this guy. Let's get to it. So to start off with, we're going to put on some base colors, and then... What?
Want to do some video games?
What? No, go away.
Fucking nerd.
You're the nerd.
Yeah, you.
Whatever.
What? Who? How? When?
They've got the water slide decals. They're completely painted. They even put the freaking clear coat on the thing. Who did this? Who did this? Who did this? That would be me. Who are you? I'm the off-screen camera version of you that actually gets stuff done because you don't have to worry about the camera. What do you mean? I get projects done all the time. It just takes me a little bit, you know? It's just set the camera and... Neat story, but yeah, video's over. Wait, no!